first of all, it's my favorite airplane, and I flew 7 or 8 different airplanes in my career. I was in for 38 years, and it's the favorite airplane I flew. The mission was just spectacular, so when I look up and I see it, I think of the men down on the ground that were able to survive and not end up in the Hanoi Hilton because of the job that the people flying this airplane did.
This aircraft, U.S. Navy serial number 134600, was modified and painted by the museum's Restoration Division to represent Captain Smith's Air Force Cross aircraft. It was part of Operation Farmgate and flown by the South Vietnamese Air Force from 1965 to 1975. This aircraft, which performed rescue escort duties, will be part of the larger display of search and rescue in the Southeast Asia War Gallery.
Volunteers did the engine, as they have been for most of the time that I've been there. Usually an engine that's going to get restored would go to the volunteers. That project of the A-1H that we have, that you're seeing, was a project 10 years ago or so that I was working on. The lack of parts that we didn't have and resources was not there, was not in place. So we were at the point where we knew that that project was only going to be a external visual display. There wasn't going to be anything inside it to make it a full airplane. And it also had been already picked, the Proud American had already been chosen at that time that we were going to depict it as. But I didn't have a lot of the parts that even would make it visually correct on the outside. We were missing the oil cooler and the intake, and a lot of the major parts of the airplane. The cowling was completely incorrect that the Vietnamese were using and all that stuff. So after a while it got put away, and then years went by, and at the the generosity of the Skyraider Society, a marriage between them and the museum came up that I'm not exactly aware of the details of that, but they decided to fund the project and had all these parts, and then that's what made the airplane become a project again, and we were able to see it all the way through to the end. And yeah, given all the cool pictures that we had so we could duplicate everything correctly. Because the original airplane, of course, was lost in a crash. So we had this one that the Vietnamese flew, and we're able to make it the Proud American that you're going to see on display. It looked really good. I have to admit, we really nailed that one. It came out really nice.
It's for the oil cooler. So that goes on the bottom, and the intake's up top.
It's basically what it was, a fuselage with wings. You know, missing a lot of the armor plating up front, missing cowling pieces and stuff like that. So it was a pile when we started with it. Canopy stuff gone, things like that.
It gets mounted to the intake side, up along the rocker arm, and then actually this rear lead that goes to the spark plug behind threads through this baffle. So it's a little intricate, but it's not too bad.
We were taking the nose bowl ring, the one I assume that came with the aircraft from the boneyard. It was pretty dinged up, so we decided, we had an extra one that was considered, I don't remember if it was new old stock or if it was fresh out of like an overhaul shop type of thing. So we pulled that out, decided to switch nose bowl rings, so I was taking the inner cowling flaps off the old one and putting them on the new one. So the easiest way to do it was just to sit in it and do it.
All these black pieces up here, this is all armor plating. It wraps around behind the engine. There's also a big section of armor plating that comes underneath where the cockpit is. So there's a large part of armor plating that goes on this airplane.
But this is stuff that the Skyraider Pilots Association has had made for us.
We had parts 3D printed. The Skyraider Pilots Association kind of initiated that being done because we didn't think we were going to be able to find any of the armor plate, which is the whole forward side of the fuselage and the belly underneath basically underneath the center section under the pilot is all armor plate. And we didn't think that any of that would be available. So they initiated having some parts 3D scanned that were out there on flying airplanes. Had those 3D scanned. We didn't think those were going to be available. We wound up finding probably 90% of the armor plate for the airplane. It just come out of the woodwork. And so most of that is not 3D printed. Actually, the only 3D printed parts are on the belly, armor plate that's on the belly. So, and the center fairing, pylon fairing, the center pylon fairing for the big center line drop tank, that fairing that goes around that pylon, that's 3D printed as well.
We just wanted the standoffs to work so that it'll slide right into the yoke on the front, and the Zeus fasteners. I'm not going to fool you guys. The Zeus fasteners will clip right into the uniform. Those are the Zeuses right there. I think those Zeuses are a little short on grip length, but we can make all of these that you need. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, so the engine was on when we pulled it in the hangar, but we had to take it back off to do some firewall repairs and button some things up on the firewall, get all that squared away. And then as soon as that was done, bolted the engine back on, which is always a pretty big milestone to see that go back on for the last time. Ken Holston with the Skyraider Pilots Association, who's a retired lieutenant colonel, currently flies Skyraiders for the Cavanaugh Flight Museum out in Texas. He's just like a walking encyclopedia of Skyraider knowledge. And he assembled the color and markings package for us. Super detailed, immensely helpful. Yeah, he was a huge help in getting that to us and asking any questions we might have. He was always there to help us solve a problem or come to a solution on how something should look or be or how it was.
Thinking about everyone who's served with this particular aircraft and pilots, maintenance crews, everyone, and you just want to do a good job for them, why we do what we do. My big assignment was restoring the cockpit. There's a lot of missing instruments, there was a lot of water-based paint in there, and that was used, paintbrushed on, so we had to strip all the paint out and fix all of that. I ripped all my pairs of jeans trying to get up in there and everything, because it's such a high step and it's pretty cramped.
Tight spaces in there.
Yeah. Very helpful to have reference material, because sometimes when you look up the drawings, they're either washed out where you can't read them, or they're incomplete in some way. So it's very helpful to reproduce a piece that you know is accurate. And the left knee panel was also missing as well, so ended up having to make another form.
This panel was missing, so we had to refabricate it. So we made a die and pressed it on our big press.
I cut all the test pieces at home because I wanted to make sure they fit, because I never designed anything on a computer before. So I learned this program, I designed it, and then I cut them out on my my router at home, test fit them in the airplane, and then cut them out with exhibits CNC. We were missing the headrest assembly for the Skyraider, so we had to fabricate one. And part of the headrest is a metal formed piece, or almost like a dish that fits right behind the pilot's head. So we had to use the power hammer and shrink the metal, and then kind of hammer it to fit a form block that I made, and then planished the metal out to get rid of all the bumps, and it turned out smooth. So this is kind of halfway through the process here, and this is the finished product.
Oh, so you do those sides there too then?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Cool.
I put these in the manual, the foot shrinker, and it kind of crisp up those edges there.
The circuit breaker panel was missing, so we took that off so we could replicate that.
We needed to fabricate a new one because you couldn't locate a used one or anything like that. So we had a sit-in cockpit that we were borrowing from somebody, so I was able to remove that panel and then make a form off of that panel and press it in our press and then drill the holes, and thankfully it fit.
The seat and straps were fabricated and sewn up by John Goins. He did a really nice job. And then we had some of the buckles that were unique to this system, 3D printed. Everything fit really nice, turned out really good. And then we also had to make this seat headrest apparatus that the parachute pack attaches to. Well, I'm laying out these buckles. These are for the seat. We don't have any, so we gotta make them. And I went through all the seats that we have in storage to try to find some buckles like that. Not a one. I made 2. That's how many I thought we needed, but we need 4. And we have John from the MIA POW outfit here on base. He's doing all the sewing for us.
My thing is, I love making parts out of nothing, or wrecked parts or blueprints or whatever. My big thing is fabricating. And I got to do lots of it on this airplane.
These cover the breech on the canopy where the explosive cartridge goes. These are 2 originals. This is where the explosive cartridges go to blow the canopy off the airplane. This ejection seat is unlike most modern seats where the seat leaves the airplane. This seat actually stays in the cockpit. When the pilot initiates an ejection, he pulls the handle, the canopy blows off. When it blows off, it sets off a sequence of things here. The rocket, first of all, moves to the vertical position, and then it fires, and then it fires and comes out and then lights off, and it pulls that yellow lanyard you see, which comes around here into a little pouch behind the seat, and then it comes out and hooks to this harness. It pulls him out of the seat, and the seat stays in the airplane. And that's why they call it the Yankee system, because it yanks the pilot out of the airplane.
Quite a few people that own Skyraiders had extra parts that they didn't use. And we worked out some trades and got some of that stuff. And believe it or not, most of the antennas and the nav lights we got on eBay. The tires were rotted. I mean, we can't use those. But fortunately, they're the same size as the B-52 outrigger tires. So that's what it has on it now.
It bolts to this. And we're missing this thing to the other side. So we gotta take this one off, reproduce it on the inside.
Is it the same on the other side too?
Yeah. Same piece. Just missing one.
All the paint jobs back then were pretty much the same. I mean, the TO tells you the patterns to put on there. It's kind of vague. I mean, if you looked at 10 different airplanes, they're a little bit different. But it's the original colors. Everything is just like it was back then.
It had some kind of coating on it, some kind of old paint. So we had to sand all that. Had a lot of filler in places where they had, the Vietnamese, I guess, South Vietnamese had repaired dents and things in it with some kind of filler. All that had to be blended because we didn't want any of that to show. And once that was all done, you clean it, wipe it down, and then it was ready for, we have to put a primer coat on it so our paint will adhere. That takes several days to get that on, and then that has to cure, and then you have to scuff that. So the whole airplane is scuffed by hand, cleaned, wiped down again, then you can start putting your color coats on. And it's a 3-color camo, so each one of those colors took 2 or 3 days for each color. You put one color on, and that takes a couple days, because you can't, you gotta spray here. You can't climb up on there to spray that because it's wet. So it took a couple weeks to get the color on, I think, and then once that cured, then we can start putting markings on it.
First of all, he's awesome to work with and for. He's very relaxed about things, but he likes things done correctly. Good person to work for or work with, and yeah, he doesn't get phased. If something doesn't go as planned, he's okay, well, what can we do to fix it? And that's okay. Mistakes happen. Let's just get it right this time, and then we move on. Really clean paint job. We want it to be equal all the way around. So you just don't want to have a really nice exterior paint job and then the inside be chipped and nasty looking. So we try to make a consistent restoration look. A lot of times we try to predict, like if you're not painting, you're there to help the painter. So if I'm not painting, I'm trying to predict what Chad needed, and if he needs a stand moved or the hose to the paint gun moved or something like that, I try to help him or get paint ready for him, so it just makes it a seamless process.
Overall, I want to say it was 3 months at least. So between priming, doing all the camos, and then putting stencils on. Stencils kind of take a lot because you have to worry about overspray, that type of thing, and you don't want to get red paint on your brand new camo scheme and stuff like that and have to repaint stuff. So a lot of taping off, a lot of different colors as far as stencils go, reds, yellows, blacks, that type of thing. A lot of them are jack points, hoist points, places to put jacks, places to put grounding wires for fueling, stuff like that. A lot of instructions, like on the minigun themselves, or labeling, like on the drop tanks, that type of stuff. And then you get into like ink stamps, like on the pylons, where it's different arming mechanisms, making sure everything's labeled, how to adjust stuff on them, how to unlatch the pylons themselves.
Stenciled onto the airplane was the armament box, and the crew chief or one of the ground crewmen, whatever the airplane was carrying for that mission was written on there with a grease pencil for reference for whoever needed to know.
Something different to do. It turned out good so far. It's really sharp.
It made sense, everything they were giving us, so they had the stencils cut. They actually sent us all that too. They sent us a stencil kit for the minigun and for the entire airplane. Any stencil on the entire airplane was sent to us in a big package. So we were able to get through those, put all the ones onto the minigun, you can lay them out so it looks right, all that fun stuff. I think we spent a little more time doing stencils than they probably did way back in the day. I don't think they spent as much time putting a stencil on the airplane as we did, but they had to get going,
Getting the camouflage painted, the paint scheme on it, and of course the propeller is always just such a huge, that's kind of like the end cap on the whole thing, is putting that on was a great milestone.
Dark green and black, you can paint the yellow over it, but it takes a while, and the yellow will actually look a lot darker than you're maybe wanting it to. So if you absolutely want that certain color, then you're going to have to paint it over white, or the lightest color possible.
Yeah, the prop, you assemble it, pull it in the paint booth. We choose to paint it all assembled just because minimize the risk of messing up the paint, trying to assemble the prop to the hub, after it's painted. So it's painted, lots of masking, because you gotta paint the base color, then mask everything off to paint the stencils, the prop tips, all of that. So it's all pretty straightforward, goes easy, it all went smooth. Exciting, yeah. Everybody pulls together, gets it done, get the prop on there, and yeah, it is. Stand back and look at it, and you're like, all right, we're actually making some headway on this thing. Because when you're installing the prop on the project that you're getting close to the end. That's kind of like one of the last items to go on. And it's always cool to see that, and it makes it really look like an airplane.
Having all the ammunition or the ordnance on the airplanes, it's a neat experience. It's a fun thing to do outside of tedious work, you know. That and you kind of get to see the fruits of your labor come together. A lot of them were pretty easy. The minigun was pretty heavy. That's like 250 pounds by itself, empty. So getting it off the A-1E and putting it on the A-1H, that was, you needed a few people to do that. Same with the rocket pods. The smaller 7-shot rocket pods, like 200 pounds loaded, and those are loaded, the small ones are, the big ones aren't. The 19-shot rocket pods are empty, but loaded, they're like 400 and something pounds. They're on it's stenciled on there, what they're supposed to be loaded. But yeah, it was nice to see it all come together and stuff like that. All that stuff got stencils as well, or specific markings that kind of correlate what each one does. The two outside CBU tubes, which are the triangle ones, cluster bomb units, they have a yellow stripe on the very front of them, so those are high explosives. The third one in has 3 stripes on it. Those were white phosphorus, so smokes. Then you have a white phosphorus bomb next to it. Depending on which side of the airplane you're on, you either have a drop tank or a minigun, and then you have the drop tank underneath the main pylon.
Yeah, this bracket that attaches to the lower part of the strut that holds the brake line in place, we didn't have them. They were completely missing from our inventory. So I was able to make a drawing from an original one off of another airplane, and then reverse engineered them, and from that drawing they were able to cut out the raw materials, and then I created the bins and made the bracket just like an original.
The fairing for the elevator has a double curve in it. It curves this way and also this way and this way, so it was a challenging piece to fabricate.
The shock strut servicing.
And we wanted to have those struts up to where they would be if they were actually inflated, like it was airworthy. So we pull all that apart. Roger Brigner made spacers to put inside the struts to bring those up to where they should be. And then, you know, all that got painted and then reinstalled.
David Hills, he 3D printed for us a couple knobs that we're unable to locate, and for the armament panels. He also helped print the pendant disc activator, which is located behind the headrest.
So all the lettering, marking colors, and the camo colors were matched off of Neil Melton's A-1H Skyraider down in Tennessee at the Tennessee Museum of Aviation. His airplane is Lieutenant America, which is combat veteran and still wearing its original Vietnam paint. So John Goldenbaum, who was a Skyraider pilot, owns Consolidated Aircraft Coatings in Flabob Airport in California. They color matched all of the colors off of Neil's airplane to get the most accurate colors that we could for ours. So all of the colors on that are matched off original Vietnam paint, which was pretty cool.
Was it like painting the nose art?
Stressful.
She did awesome though.
Yeah, I won't lie, stressful. Yeah, because you're trying to, you know, it's not like you're just painting something where there's no reference, or you're painting something historical, right? So you're trying to make it look so that when somebody looks at ours and they look at historical photos of the real one, they can't see a difference. Although there are differences because you can't match it exactly perfect just looking at photos, so, but it's pretty close. Right and left side, the difficult part about this one is that looking at historical photos of the real thing, it was obvious that they had done it with stencils. So it was a multi-layered stencil, basically. So you're, you know, the brown body of the eagle was a stencil, the white part was a stencil. So each color was a separate stencil. The black outline was a stencil painted on top of all of those colors. And so that was kind of challenging and stressful to get all that lined up and the stencils done properly so that it looked good. When you peel all that off and you're like, ah, all right, it turned out okay. If it had just been a freehand painting, it would have been a lot easier. But yeah, the stencils added a challenging bit to that. So. A lot of times these were, painted outside in the field in theater. So the guys are out there, knocking out the nose art probably as quick as they can. And it's hard. Well, I could make that look a little bit nicer, but that wouldn't be historically correct. So you have to hold back and not try to correct things that you see or, something that's not lined up perfectly or whatever. And we tend to want to make them as perfect as we can, but they weren't perfect when they were in combat.
The day when we put them out to take the pictures, you realize that the project's over with, but yet it's actually a new beginning for everybody to get to see it, and that's to come as they reveal it to the public on display.
You get kind of attached to these airplanes. I mean, going into it, it's just another airplane. And that particular one didn't have a whole lot of significance. But since we're representing one that did, and then meeting a few of the guys that flew them and seeing some of their videos, I mean, you get a whole different look at the airplane and what it was used for. And it's like the icing on the cake towing it over here yesterday. And now everybody can come see it. We try to get everything done over there. Sometimes there might be some little finishing up things we do over here, but we kind of had a mental checklist that we went over and make sure everything was done and it was ready to tow. There's certain things you got to check before you tow an airplane. And we roll it out in the sunlight, man, it was awesome. The new paint job and everything on it. Like I said, it's kind of, I don't know, I'm sensitive to things like that, so I get kind of emotional sometimes. Kind of corny maybe, but it's a big privilege to be able to do that kind of stuff. And I've been coming here since I was a little kid. And I tell people, my folks drop me off in the summer off school, drop me off in the morning, and I spend the whole day walking around looking at airplanes and stuff. And now I get to play with them like every day, climb in them, work on them. I mean, it's for a guy like me, the perfect job. This is one of my favorite ones because when we got the airplane, it was pretty much empty hulk, missing so many parts. We were fortunate to find some guys that offered up some parts for us, but a lot of the parts we could not find. We see veterans' faces and the stories that it brings out. That's why we're here.